Picture this. You wake up on a quiet Tuesday morning, step outside with your coffee and hear the rumble of concrete trucks disappearing from the old stone bridge. The only bridge connecting your property to the outside world now blocked by massive concrete barriers. That's what Marcus Kellerman found when his corrupt HOA decided his 60-year-old family farm was ruining their $15 million luxury neighborhood. The smell of wet concrete hung heavy in the morning air. His diabetic mother couldn't reach her dialysis treatment. His teenage daughter was trapped at home missing school. Emergency vehicles couldn't even get through. The HOA claimed it was for emergency bridge repairs. But Marcus soon uncovered their real plan. Cut off his only road until he sold his $3.2 million property for next to nothing, clearing the final obstacle to their exclusive development. But they picked the wrong farmer. Marcus had cameras rolling, 2 years of evidence, and a legal powerhouse that would soon land the HOA president in serious legal trouble. What would you do if someone literally cut off your lifeline to force you out? And where are you watching from? I bet half of you have HOA nightmare stories of your own. Marcus never thought he'd be fighting for his family's future at 52. As the third-generation owner of Kellerman Farm, he'd inherited 15 acres of the most beautiful land you could imagine. Rolling hills covered in heritage apple trees planted by his grandfather back in the 1960s. Back then, this place was nothing but farmland and country roads. His grandfather, Daniel Kellerman, had even helped fund the construction of Millbrook Bridge, the charming stone structure that connected their hilltop farm to the main county road. The smell of apple blossoms in spring, the crunch of gravel under worn work boots, the distant lowing of cattle from neighboring farms. This was rural America at its finest. The Kellermans lived in their original 1890s farmhouse, its weathered siding sheltering 5 generations. His wife Sarah worked as a school nurse. His 16-year-old daughter Emma played varsity soccer. And his 78-year-old mother Dorothy lived with them, needing life-saving dialysis 3 times a week. They were a normal, hard-working American family on land they had called home for 6 decades. But times change, and not always for the better. 10 years ago, a luxury developer called Prestige Valley Estates bought the surrounding 200 acres and built 47 oversized homes worth between $800,000 and $1.5 million each. Overnight, Marcus found himself surrounded by people who saw his family's farm as an eyesore. To them, his organic vegetable fields didn't fit their idea of luxury living. The new residents formed the Millbrook Lane Homeowners Association, claiming control over the shared private road, including the historic bridge Marcus's family helped build. Unfortunately, the 1962 easement documents were vague about maintenance responsibilities, leaving a legal gray area that would soon become their weapon. Then came Vivian Ashworth, the kind of HOA president you hope you never meet. Picture a 61-year-old retired pharmaceutical executive with a perfectly styled blonde bob, always dressed in designer tennis whites, driving a white Tesla like she owned the world. She'd moved from Connecticut just 2 years earlier, bringing an attitude that screamed, "I'm better than you small-town people." Vivian ran for HOA president unopposed after somehow convincing other candidates to withdraw. Her first official act? Complaining about the agricultural odors from Marcus's compost pile. You know, the smell of healthy soil that grows the same kind of produce she probably bought at upscale markets for triple the price. At first, the harassment was subtle. Certified letters about property value concerns. Anonymous complaints about tractor noise at 7 a.m. because it disturbed the tennis matches. Polite suggestions that Marcus might be happier living somewhere more agricultural, but each encounter grew more aggressive. Vivian began parking her Tesla near the bridge, timing Marcus's daily routines like a stalker. She photographed his delivery trucks, measured tire widths, and documented every supposed violation of some imaginary community standard. The intimidation escalated when Vivian hired Blackstone and Associates, a law firm known for ruthless HOA enforcement. They demanded Marcus provide proof of legal road access within 30 days, or face access termination. Marcus tried to be reasonable. He offered to pay a fair share of the bridge maintenance costs. Vivian just smirked and said, "Oh, Marcus, this isn't about money. It's about what's best for the community." The way she said community made it painfully clear his family wasn't part of it. That's when Marcus began recording every interaction. During one heated phone call, he overheard Vivian talking to someone named Brad about a $15 million development potential. He kept hearing phrases like Phase 1 complete and final obstacle removal. The night before the bridge was blocked, Vivian held an emergency HOA meeting. Marcus wasn't invited. The next morning, he stepped outside to find massive concrete barriers and road-closed authorized vehicles only signs. The air reeked of fresh cement and diesel as construction trucks pulled away. His family's only route to the outside world gone. Dorothy missed her dialysis appointment. Emma got detention for being late to school. And Marcus realized this was war. The bridge blockade was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, Marcus received a 14-page legal notice from Blackstone and Associates that made his blood boil. Even the letterhead looked expensive, and the message was brutal. Surrender or lose everything. Vivian's lawyers accused Marcus of exceeding agricultural use limits and damaging community infrastructure through excessive vehicle traffic. Their evidence? Photos of tire ruts allegedly made by his tractor. But Marcus recognized those tracks immediately. They belonged to the HOA's own construction vehicles, the same ones that installed the barriers days earlier. The deadline, 21 days to remedy all violations or face permanent access termination. Translation: sell your family farm or become a prisoner on your own land. But Marcus wasn't backing down. That weekend, while Sarah managed the farm and Emma handled chores, Marcus spent 2 long days at the county records office. The musty smell of old paper and humming fluorescent lights reminded him of his high school library. But these dusty file cabinets held his family's future. What he found made him smile for the first time in weeks. The original 1962 easement deed clearly stated that the Kellerman family had perpetual vehicular access rights for both agricultural and residential purposes. He also knew that continuous road use for over 20 years created permanent access rights that HOAs couldn't revoke. And his family had been using that road for 60 years. Even better, the document specified that road maintenance costs were to be shared proportionally by usage. As Marcus dug deeper, he discovered the HOA had been overcharging commercial trucking companies and pocketing the extra money. That's when he hired Janet Reeves, a tough, seasoned attorney who'd spent 30 years defending property rights and never lost to an HOA. Janet took one look at the evidence and immediately filed a quiet title action to clarify his road rights, while demanding a full audit of the HOA's suspicious $180,000 road maintenance budget. And that's when Marcus uncovered something that changed everything. Following the money trail through construction invoices, Marcus made a stunning discovery. The HOA had billed the same road repairs to 2 separate accounts, charging both homeowner dues and the Prestige Valley Estates construction budget. $45,000 billed twice for the same emergency infrastructure improvements. It was clear, documented fraud. Vivian's response was swift and vicious. She called an emergency HOA meeting at her mansion, naturally, excluding Marcus to discuss so-called threats to community property values. She served fine wine and imported cheese while plotting to destroy a family that had lived there long before she ever showed up. Days later, anonymous flyers appeared in every mailbox. They accused Marcus of spreading dangerous fertilizers that could harm children and pets. The photos, taken with long-range lenses, made his compost bins look like toxic waste sites. Even the paper smelled faintly of expensive perfume. Vivian's signature scent, everyone recognized it. The psychological warfare didn't stop there. The HOA installed surveillance cameras pointed directly at Marcus's gate, and floodlights so bright they turned his peaceful farm into a prison yard. The gentle night sounds of crickets and owls were replaced by the constant electrical hum of industrial lighting. Emma started wearing earplugs just to sleep. But Marcus was already several moves ahead. His trail cameras caught HOA board members sneaking around his property at midnight. What began as harassment was now a full-scale siege. At his weekend farm stand, neighbors quietly passed along rumors and information about the HOA's growing desperation. That's where Mrs. Mila, a retired teacher and longtime HOA member, pulled Marcus aside. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Vivian tried to recruit me. She wants us to complain about your property taxes. But Marcus, she's planning something much bigger than road access." That warning proved true the next morning. While attending his daughter Emma's parent-teacher conference, Marcus walked out to find his car tires shredded. The smell of freshly cut rubber filled the air. Security footage showed a white Tesla in the parking lot just minutes before the vandalism. The message was clear. We can reach you anywhere. This wasn't about land anymore, it was about control. Could a corrupt HOA terrorize a family into giving up everything their ancestors had built? Marcus began sleeping with a baseball bat beside his bed. Sarah started taking different routes to work, checking her mirrors for Tesla headlights. Every crunch of gravel outside made the Kellerman family freeze. What used to sound like an honest day's labor now carried the echo of fear. But Marcus had one powerful advantage. Vivian didn't know he'd been recording everything. Every phone call, every threat, every false accusation. He had timestamps, photos, and a file so detailed it could flip her entire operation upside down. 3 days after the tire slashing, the next wave hit. County inspectors arrived without warning. Code enforcement, fire safety, building compliance, even environmental officers. All armed with clipboards and suspicion. Vivian had mobilized the entire bureaucracy against him. Every department had received identical complaints, filed within the same 2-hour window, all claiming public safety concerns. Marcus's farm, operating legally since 1960, was suddenly required to obtain a new commercial agricultural permit costing $2,800, plus a $15,000 environmental study. The deadline 45 days or face $500 daily fines. But Sarah wasn't fooled. Her medical background made her naturally skeptical of coincidences. She began digging through social media and public records. What she uncovered made Marcus's stomach drop. Vivian's LinkedIn showed direct ties to 3 county officials who had suddenly become interested in their farm. Then came the smoking gun. Vivian's Facebook photos from a Napa Valley girls' trip showed her drinking wine with the county commissioner's wife. Restaurant receipts revealed dinner meetings with the lead code inspector just 2 days before the flood of complaints began. Marcus had seen enough corruption stories to know what this was. Favor trading. Plain and simple. When Janet Reeves, his attorney, reviewed the evidence, she filed a selective enforcement complaint. She pointed out that dozens of nearby farms had the same so-called violations, but none were being targeted. Janet demanded all HOA county communications through a public records request. What came back was explosive. Email threads showed Vivian had been grooming those officials for months, hosting dinners, charity events, and private meetings, all to pressure Marcus into surrendering. One email even stated, "Make him so miserable with inspections he'll take any offer to get out." And just when Marcus thought he'd seen the worst, Mrs. Mila returned with something that changed everything. Hidden on her phone was a secret recording from a recent HOA board meeting. She'd tucked her phone under a decorative pillow, never suspecting what she'd capture. The audio was crystal clear. Vivian's voice discussing Phase 2 pressure tactics, telling board members to document every violation, real or imagined. But what froze Marcus's blood was her next line. "Once he cracks, we'll buy the land for 40% below market." Then Brad flips it for the full $3.2 million. The plan was laid bare, and this time Marcus had undeniable proof. Marcus recognized the name immediately. Brad, the developer contact he'd overheard in previous phone calls. The conspiracy was bigger than he imagined. This wasn't just harassment. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to steal his property at fire sale prices. Vivian's next move targeted something even more personal: water. She convinced the HOA to pass emergency water conservation measures under the guise of a fabricated drought. Suddenly, Marcus's irrigation system violated community standards, and the main water line to his farm mysteriously required weeks of repairs. The timing was surgical. Without water, his organic vegetables would die just as summer growing season peaked. 3 major restaurant contracts for farm-to-table deliveries were already hanging by a thread due to restricted access. Losing crops would have destroyed him financially, but Marcus had learned to think 3 steps ahead. Instead of begging the HOA for water access, he quietly hired a well drilling company and tapped a new source directly on his property. Completely legal, fully independent, and infuriating to Vivian. The sound of the drill grinding through bedrock at 6 in the morning probably woke half the neighborhood. Every foot drilled was a step toward freedom from her stranglehold. Meanwhile, community tensions escalated. Vivian supporters blocked cars at Marcus's farm stand, forcing customers to walk long distances to buy fresh vegetables. Emma was excluded from study groups and social events. Teenage social exclusion mirrored the adult conflict. The breaking point came one night when industrial herbicide was sprayed along Marcus's property line, killing his prize heritage apple trees, 13-year-old varieties planted by his great-grandfather. The acrid chemical smell lingered in the morning air. Those trees weren't just plants, they were living family history. Marcus stood among the withered branches, touching bark his ancestors had touched. Emma wept over the trees she had climbed as a child. Dorothy in her wheelchair stared in silence, recalling her husband planting those saplings 60 years ago. Later that night, Sarah found Marcus at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., staring at photos of the trees in bloom. "They're trying to erase us," he whispered. "Not just push us out. Erase every trace we were ever here." Within hours, photos of the dead apple trees went viral on local Facebook groups. Hundreds of neighbors, many who had never heard of the Kellermans, commented angrily. The chemical stench carried for miles. This was no longer a property dispute, it was environmental warfare. Vivian doubled down. She contacted Marcus's remaining restaurant clients, falsely claiming food safety issues due to compromised farm roads. Her calls were recorded, her voice dripping with feigned concern. The restaurants, already wary of liability, canceled contracts, slashing monthly farm income by 70% overnight. For the first time in his life, Marcus worried about mortgage payments. The attacks continued. County fire inspectors demanded $25,000 in emergency access improvements. Insurance policies were suddenly under review. The timing was precise. Sarah's detective work revealed why. Vivian sat on the board of directors for Marcus's insurance company. Her influence had triggered the policy review. The meeting minutes discussed problematic rural properties in development zones. Classic regulatory capture. The harassment escalated even further. Prestige Valley construction trucks dumped debris across Marcus's certified organic fields. Broken concrete, rusty rebar, chemical-stained lumber, while cameras recorded every illegal move. Vivian filed emergency environmental complaints claiming Marcus's farm was unsafe. She even contacted newspapers with fabricated contamination stories. But Marcus had proof. Mrs. Mila and the farm surveillance network documented everything. Time-stamped photos traced debris directly to Prestige Valley. Environmental tests confirmed chemical signatures matched construction waste. Marcus was the victim, not the perpetrator. Federal authorities were quietly building cases based on Marcus's evidence. Wire transfers totaling $400,000 from Prestige Valley to Vivian's consulting company over 18 months aligned perfectly with harassment campaigns. Then came the smoking gun. Video footage of Vivian's private strategy meeting, showing her admitting to fabricating evidence and distributing $10,000 in cash to board members. The audio was crystal clear. The conspiracy was undeniable. Federal charges were imminent. Vivian's world began to crumble. Tennis club membership suspended. Pharmaceutical colleagues filed ethics complaints. Legal bills exceeded $80,000, and former allies faced petty retaliation. Vandalized cars. Lost clients, social ostracism. Meanwhile, the psychological toll on Marcus's family was severe. Dorothy's blood pressure spiked during dialysis, triggering cardiac warnings. Emma's grades fell due to social isolation. The smell of diesel fuel, once tied to honest farm labor, now induced panic. Every engine after dark froze the family in place. Sarah discovered Vivian's influence ran deeper than anyone imagined, quietly preparing escape plans if needed. Marcus found her crying one evening, clutching Emma's soccer uniform. What if we have to leave? What if she wins? It was then Marcus realized the fight wasn't just about property rights. It was about whether an American family could be forced from land their ancestors had built. That night, he made a decision that changed everything. No more defense. It was time to go on the offensive. The federal investigation expanded daily. IRS Criminal Division opened tax evasion cases. Bank fraud investigators uncovered money laundering. Wire fraud charges triggered federal jurisdiction when payments crossed state lines. Vivian's final desperate gambit, to have Marcus arrested on fabricated terroristic threat charges, was time to derail his public evidence presentation. But Marcus's legal team was ready. Phone records, witnesses, audio, everything dismantled her last lie. The final showdown loomed. The town hall meeting would be Vivian's last public appearance as a free woman. The breakthrough came on a rain-soaked Thursday morning when Janet Reeves called Marcus with news that would change everything. Vivian's paralegal, digging through dusty county archives for the original easement documents, had unearthed a forgotten clause buried in the 1962 road construction contract, overlooked for 60 years. The language was dense and legalistic, but the meaning hit Marcus like a lightning bolt. If road maintenance costs ever exceeded 300% of the original estimates, responsibility automatically reverted to the county government. Janet Reeves's voice crackled with excitement over the phone as she read the exact wording twice. Marcus grabbed his calculator with trembling hands. The original 1962 maintenance estimate was $21,000, adjusted for inflation. Vivian's HOA was spending $180,000 annually, more than 8 times the legal threshold. They'd been operating outside their authority for years. But Tom Patel's forensic accounting revealed something far worse. The HOA's preferred contractor, Valley Infrastructure, was secretly a subsidiary of Prestige Valley Estates. Every road repair bill was inflated, 400%. Above market rates, and excess funds funneled directly to the development company through fake invoices. Sarah spread the bank records across the kitchen table. The smell of fresh coffee couldn't mask the stench of corruption. Every pothole repair, every line painting job, every emergency improvement was theft. Every cent traced was fraud. The county attorney's panicked calls confirmed the scale of the problem. If road maintenance reverted to government control, the county would become liable for blocking Marcus's constitutional access rights. Denying access to a family with a disabled member, Dorothy, could trigger federal civil rights violations with massive financial penalties. Marcus remembered reading about similar cases that ended in million-dollar settlements. The county's insurance company was already threatening coverage cancellation, creating political pressure reaching all the way to the governor's office. Vivian's personal records, obtained through federal subpoenas, revealed $200,000 in unreported consulting income from Prestige Valley Estates. The IRS Criminal Division began building tax evasion cases, while state boards prepared to revoke her pharmaceutical licenses for ethics violations. The bigger picture became clear. Prestige Valley Estates faced foreclosure if Phase 2 of the project didn't start by December. Bank executives pressured the developer to resolve access issues by any means necessary, explaining the increasingly reckless harassment timeline. $8 million in potential losses loomed if the project was delayed. Every month Marcus held out, the conspirators risked more, and Marcus held the nuclear option. The original environmental impact study for Prestige Valley Estates had assumed his 15 acres would voluntarily cooperate. Federal environmental law required a full review if development expanded beyond its original scope. Including his property would trigger an 18-month federal environmental review, halting the project and bankrupting the operation. His heritage apple orchard hosted protected bird species, and his organic farming practices had created ecosystems requiring extensive study. Environmental lawyers were already circling, sensing opportunity. The Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, and National Environmental Policy Act all offered multiple intervention paths. Each study would cost Prestige Valley over $2 million, with no guarantee of approval. The revelation transformed Marcus's family. Sarah's confidence returned. Emma shared updates proudly at school. Dorothy's stress-related health symptoms improved for the first time in months, but Marcus also felt the weight of responsibility. He could destroy Vivian, bankrupt Prestige Valley Estates, and trigger federal investigations that would shake local government. But at what personal cost? That evening, he stood among his poisoned heritage apple trees, the air still tinged with the faint chemical smell of vandalism. Dead branches creaked in the wind like accusatory fingers, reminding him what Vivian had tried to steal. 6 HOA board members had already demanded her resignation. Her lawyers withdrew, citing criminal liability. Insurance companies canceled her coverage. Federal prosecutors were preparing cases that could send her to prison for decades. Marcus realized this wasn't just about his farm anymore. It had become a test case for rural property rights across America. Family heritage versus corporate greed. Individual liberty versus HOA tyranny. Millions were watching, and his victory could protect countless other families facing similar attacks. Marcus's kitchen table became ground zero. Strong coffee mixed with the rustle of legal documents as his war counsel assembled at midnight. Janet Reeves' briefcase weathered from decades of court battles. Tom Patel, forensic evidence spread across every surface. Sarah coordinating media outreach. Mrs. Mila nervously glancing out the window, sharing insider intelligence. The strategy was surgical, a coordinated 72-hour blitzkrieg designed to overwhelm Vivian before she could mount a desperate counterattack. Janet spread county maps across the table, red ink marking political pressure points and legal vulnerabilities like a general planning D-Day. 4 simultaneous fronts: county liability, federal civil rights violations, criminal conspiracy, environmental enforcement. Janet traced battle lines with her finger. By the time they realize what's happening, federal agents will be reading Miranda rights, she said. The legal arsenal was devastating. Emergency motion demanding immediate road. Reopening under the forgotten 1962 clause, federal civil rights complaint citing disability, discrimination for Dorothy criminal referral. Documenting systematic corruption, environmental review that could bankrupt the development entirely. Marcus had learned a hard truth. During these months of harassment, sometimes the fight isn't just for your land. It's for your life, your family, and the principle that no one, no matter how powerful, can crush justice. Fighting corruption isn't about what civics textbooks teach. Power flows through relationships, regulatory capture, and financial influence. Local officials can act as shadow governments, bending rules for the wealthy. But federal investigations cut through all that like wildfire through dry grass. Tom's forensic analysis laid bare the scope of the fraud. $400,000 in fake HOA charges, $200,000 in bribes to Vivian, and systematic money laundering through contractor schemes. Every paper trail led directly to Prestige Valley's boardroom, and potentially to RICO prosecutions that could destroy entire corporate hierarchies. Emma wandered into the kitchen for a midnight snack, eyes wide at the evidence covering every surface. Dad, are we really going to win? Marcus pulled her into a hug, the faint scent of apple shampoo mixing with teenage hope. We're going to do more than win, sweetheart. We're going to make sure this never happens to another family. Sarah coordinated media contacts, building national attention. Mrs. Mila's intelligence network secretly recorded 6 HOA members capturing Vivian's unraveling behavior, screaming at contractors, threatening board members, making racist remarks about those who didn't belong in luxury neighborhoods. The environmental nuclear option required perfect timing. Triggering federal reviews would immediately freeze construction loans and halt development. Environmental lawyers were ready, injunctions prepped, waiting for Marcus's signal. Dorothy wheeled herself into the kitchen, dialysis machine humming softly. Your grandfather would be proud, she said. He built that bridge with his own hands. He'd want you to protect it. Political pressure mounted. State agricultural commissioners opened investigations. County officials facing re-election distanced themselves. And federal representatives publicly supported rural heritage preservation. Marcus practiced explaining complex legal cases in plain language. Visual aids traced money flows. Audio clips exposed criminal conversations. Charts revealed systematic theft. Every piece crafted for maximum impact on ordinary citizens. Community support exploded. Save Kellerman Farm surged to 5,000 members across 3 states. Local businesses offered services at cost. Newspapers prepared coordinated coverage. Advocacy groups sent representatives from as far as Montana and Georgia. Sarah uncovered multiple federal violations: wire fraud for electronic threats, mail fraud for postal harassment, and civil rights conspiracy under Section 1983. Each violation carried decades in prison. The timeline for execution was military precise. Tuesday 9 a.m. Legal filings. Document avalanche Tuesday 2 p.m. Media interviews. Public pressure Tuesday 7 p.m. Town hall climax. Vivian's desperation became reckless. Just 12 hours before the assault, Mrs. Mila called Marcus at 2 a.m. She's lost her mind. I just watched her sneak onto your property, tampering near your equipment shed. Security cameras captured it in crystal clear HD. Vivian, in dark clothing and latex gloves, methodically damaging his irrigation system with bolt cutters and a crowbar. Her goal? Sabotage his organic certification by contaminating crops with unfiltered water. Vivian didn't realize the system was federally monitored. Tampering triggered automatic FBI jurisdiction. She had escalated from harassment to federal crimes. Her final blunder came at dawn. Panicked, she called the county sheriff, falsely claiming Marcus made terroristic threats to stop his town hall presentation. The sheriff was skeptical. Marcus had been coaching Emma's soccer team at the exact time with 60 witnesses. Phone logs and credit card receipts proved his alibi. Even worse, FBI investigators discovered Vivian had recruited her landscaper's teenage son, offering $500 to make anonymous calls claiming Marcus planned retaliation. The boy immediately confessed, turning conspiracy and witness tampering charges into certainty. Meanwhile, Marcus's legal blitzkrieg launched. Janet filed emergency motions in 3 courts simultaneously, creating a document avalanche. County clerks processed restraining orders, civil rights complaints, and environmental triggers faster than Vivian's attorneys could respond. Faced with potential federal liability for blocking medical access, the county attorney ordered immediate road barrier removal. Heavy equipment demolished Vivian's concrete walls at Millbrook Bridge, captured live by local news. Cameras. Vivian's world collapsed faster than expected. Tennis clubs expelled her. Former colleagues filed ethics complaints. Country clubs banned her indefinitely. Tom Patel's forensic evidence triggered immediate criminal referrals. Bank records documenting $400,000 in fraud led state prosecutors to file charges within hours. Instead of months, every piece of Vivian's scheme, every bribe, every inflated invoice, every act of harassment, now exposed, and the endgame had just begun. The environmental review turned out to be Prestige Valley's death blow. Federal investigators confirmed that Marcus's organic farm provided critical habitat for an endangered bird species, nesting exclusively in heritage apple trees. Construction permits were permanently revoked, pending years of environmental impact studies. Banking executives who had financed Prestige Valley's expansion went into full crisis mode. Over $8 million in development loans instantly became worthless with no legal path forward. Emergency meetings erupted across boardrooms. Executives were fired and bankruptcy attorneys were called in. Amid the chaos, Emma brought home a small but powerful moment of hope. She told Marcus that Vivian's daughter had stood up in the school cafeteria, tearfully apologizing for her mother's behavior. She asked if they could still be friends despite everything that had happened. Meanwhile, the federal investigation kept expanding like ripples in a pond. The IRS's criminal division uncovered more unreported income connecting Vivian to projects across 3 counties. Wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, and potential RICO violations were stacking up faster than her lawyers could respond. National attention followed quickly. CNN's rural affairs correspondent arrived to cover Marcus's story as a symbol of family farms standing up against corporate corruption. Agricultural journals called it the most significant property rights battle in a generation. But Marcus knew Vivian wasn't finished. Cornered people don't surrender, they lash out. The air still smelled faintly of burned wiring and broken concrete, mixed with the sweet scent of restored freedom. Dorothy's dialysis van crossed the rebuilt bridge, and the low hum of its engine felt like victory. Medical access restored, family rights vindicated, peace at least for now. Yet Marcus kept his guard up. Wounded predators are most dangerous when cornered, and Vivian still had money, connections, and enough desperation to try something unthinkable. Then came her final, reckless move. Marcus received notice that his organic certification was under emergency review. Anonymous complaints claimed contamination and falsified testing. Losing certification would wipe out his contracts and crush his farm's value overnight. Sarah, ever the investigator, immediately noticed the pattern. The complaint wording matched previous harassment letters exactly, and the timing lined up perfectly with Vivian's growing legal troubles. Someone else was helping her. That someone turned out to be Brad Morrison, the shadow behind everything. Tom Patel's analysis uncovered that Morrison, a high-level Prestige Valley executive, wasn't just a business partner. He was Vivian's long-term romantic partner from her pharmaceutical days. Their 20-year relationship explained her blind loyalty and reckless risk-taking. Morrison had been funding the harassment campaign, bribing officials, and paying Vivian's legal fees as part of a calculated corporate land grab. The conspiracy ran deeper than anyone imagined. And Morrison was far more dangerous. His influence stretched across multiple states with political allies who could stall investigations or intimidate witnesses. Suddenly, Marcus's allies began suffering targeted attacks. Jake Henderson lost his city planning job after false ethics. Complaints Mrs. Miller received anonymous. Threats about illegal surveillance. Tom Patel's accounting firm was audited by state revenue agents, acting on fabricated tips. This wasn't small-town corruption anymore. It was organized crime. Then came Morrison's most sinister move yet, environmental sabotage. He hired consultants to contaminate Marcus's soil with trace amounts of banned pesticides, enough to ruin his organic certification during standard testing. But the plan failed. Those same consultants were already under FBI surveillance for sabotaging organic farms in other states. Agents intercepted their communications before the chemicals reached Marcus's property. That's when the case exploded into a full-scale federal operation. The FBI realized they weren't dealing with isolated fraud. They were uncovering a multi-state racketeering enterprise. Wiretaps, undercover agents, and surveillance teams spread across the region. Then came the darkest revelation yet. Federal agents discovered plans to kidnap Emma during soccer practice. The plot was designed to make it look like she'd run away, forcing Marcus into silence through fear. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was psychological warfare, a desperate attempt to destroy a family that refused to bow down. The kidnapping plot collapsed before it could even begin. Morrison's hired muscle turned out to be undercover federal agents who had infiltrated his network months earlier. Every recorded instruction he gave about making the family disappear until they cooperate became damning evidence, triggering attempted kidnapping and conspiracy charges that carried life sentences. Emma's safety became a federal priority. U.S. Marshals provided protection at school and soccer practice, while the family was moved to a secure safe house. The sterile smell of government facilities replaced the comforting scent of apple blossoms and freshly tilled soil, but safety was worth the sacrifice. The federal investigation expanded exponentially. Secret Service agents traced financial crimes, DEA agents probed money laundering, and ATF agents investigated weapons violations. Morrison's network had tentacles reaching into legitimate businesses, political campaigns, and regulatory agencies across multiple states. Marcus realized that defending property rights sometimes meant confronting corruption embedded deeply within American institutions. Yet there were unexpected allies. Agricultural advocacy groups, environmental organizations, and property rights lawyers had been tracking Morrison for years, waiting for the right case to strike. Marcus's evidence provided the missing link for multiple ongoing federal investigations. The arrest operation was executed across 4 states simultaneously, preventing Morrison or his co-conspirators from communicating or destroying evidence. FBI raids on Prestige Valley offices, government agencies, and political headquarters seized millions of documents detailing the full scope of the criminal enterprise. The town hall meeting the following evening had a new purpose. Marcus would not simply confront Vivian alone. He would present evidence of a nationwide conspiracy that victimized hundreds of rural families. Federal prosecutors planned to announce indictments for 37 defendants across 6 states. At the safe house, Marcus sat with his family, flanked by federal agents. Realizing that this had grown far beyond a local dispute, they had uncovered a criminal network threatening rural property ownership across America. Victory was now inevitable, but the scale of corruption they had exposed was staggering. By 6:30 p.m., the Riverside Community Center was overflowing. Over 400 people packed every seat, lined the walls, and spilled onto the sidewalk with live speakers broadcasting to another 200 spectators outside. The air vibrated with anticipation. 6 television crews turned the venue into a media battlefield. CNN, Fox News, and national network correspondents positioned cameras for maximum coverage, while local reporters streamed live to millions online. The clicks of cameras and hum of microphones created a charged backdrop, ready to amplify justice. Federal marshals flanked the entrance as officials arrived. County Commissioner Williams, State Legislator Rodriguez, EPA Regional Director Thompson, and FBI Special Agent Martinez, who had tracked Morrison's network for 3 years. The scent of coffee, nervous sweat, and institutional cologne mingled in the packed room. At exactly 7:00 p.m., Vivian Ashworth entered under federal escort. Her designer tennis outfit looked absurd paired with an ankle monitor. Her perfectly styled hair could not mask the hollow-eyed defeat of someone watching their empire crumble. Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd as cameras captured every humiliating step. Marcus approached the podium with a cold, calm focus. Months of harassment, federal investigations, and family trauma had led to this moment. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the room. 2 years ago, my family woke to find our bridge blocked by concrete barriers. We thought we were fighting a neighborhood bully. Tonight, you will see we were fighting organized crime reaching into state governments, federal agencies, and corporate boardrooms across 6 states. The evidence presentation was methodical and devastating. Massive screens displayed Morrison's money laundering network. Federal prosecutors narrated the flow of over $60 million in fraud. Audio recordings exposed Vivian discussing bribery, kidnapping conspiracies, and environmental sabotage. The first shock came when prosecutors played footage of Morrison's arrest just hours earlier. FBI agents led him from Prestige Valley headquarters in handcuffs, while trucks carried away evidence boxes. His corporate empire was being dismantled in real time. Then Special Agent Martinez delivered the mic drop moment, holding a thick folder of arrest warrants. The room fell silent. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we announce the largest rural property rights conspiracy ever prosecuted under federal racketeering statutes. 37 defendants across 6 states, 214 victimized families, $60 million in stolen property. Prison sentences that will ensure these criminals never terrorize another American family. The crowd erupted, standing, cheering, crying, and embracing. Marcus's victory was not just personal, it was justice for countless families who had faced similar attacks. Vivian's complete destruction peaked when recordings of her planning Emma's kidnapping were played. Even her loyal supporters fell silent. 3 HOA board members resigned publicly. Apologizing on live television, EPA Director Thompson announced permanent federal protection for Marcus's heritage apple orchard, recognizing it as critical habitat for endangered species. The farmland would remain agricultural forever, safeguarded by the full authority of the U.S. government. Dorothy, frail but determined, wheeled herself to the microphone. Her voice shook as she recounted missed dialysis appointments and fears for her family's survival. Her courage in front of the nation captured the profound human cost of corruption and the ultimate triumph of resilience and justice. This is America. In America, families shouldn't need federal agents to protect them from their neighbors. The corporate collapse was swift and public. Prestige Valley's CEO issued a groveling televised apology, announcing the immediate withdrawal from rural development and the creation of a $20 million victim compensation fund. Stock prices had already plummeted following federal indictments. Emma provided the evening's most powerful moment. Grabbing the microphone, she said, "Mrs. Ashworth thought we weren't good enough for her fancy neighborhood, but we're still here, and she's going to federal prison. Good people really do win in America." The legal devastation was comprehensive. Federal prosecutors announced Vivian faced 127 criminal charges, carrying sentences exceeding 40 years. Morrison's RICO charges guaranteed life imprisonment. Over $200 million in criminal proceeds were seized, with additional asset forfeitures pending. Marcus's closing words were simple but unforgettable. "We fought this battle for every American family who believes the Constitution still protects ordinary people from extraordinary corruption. Tonight we proved it does." As federal agents led Vivian away for the final time, cameras captured her turning toward Marcus with pure hatred, but her power to terrorize was gone forever. She was just another criminal heading to federal prison. Meanwhile, the Kellermans celebrated, surrounded by hundreds of cheering supporters and millions of viewers nationwide. The sound of justice, thunderous applause, tears of relief, the collective roar of a community finally free was beautiful. 3 months later, Marcus stood in his heritage apple orchard watching sunrise paint the valley gold. The sweet scent of blooming trees erased every trace of Viven's chemical terrorism. The silence was perfect. No diesel engines, no construction noise, no surveillance, just the natural symphony of birds returning to their restored habitat. Vivian Ashworth was serving year 1 of a 32-year federal sentence in a medium security facility 3 states away. Morrison received life without parole. His corporate empire was liquidated to compensate victims across 6 states. 14 government officials resigned and 37 defendants faced ongoing trials. The transformation went far beyond justice. The Kellerman Agricultural Education Fund, established with Prestige Valley's settlement money, provided full scholarships for rural students pursuing sustainable farming degrees. Sarah managed the program from their kitchen table, processing applications from teens nationwide inspired by their family's courage. Emma emerged as a regional celebrity, speaking at Future Farmers of America, chapters about constitutional rights and standing up to corporate bullies. Her prize-winning essay about the ordeal earned her a full college scholarship in organic farming and rural property law. Dorothy's health stabilized dramatically once stress disappeared. Her dialysis appointments proceeded smoothly across the restored bridge, with doctors reporting significant cardiovascular improvement. She spent hours teaching Emma heritage seed preservation, ensuring their agricultural traditions would survive another generation, sharing stories about her husband planting the first apple saplings 60 years ago. The community transformation was remarkable. 3 neighboring properties converted to organic farming, creating a regional cooperative marketing heritage produce to restaurants statewide. Kellerman Farm became an educational destination, attracting over 3,000 visitors annually, generating tourism revenue, and supporting the valley's economy. Farm-to-table restaurants partnered with the cooperative, and the annual Heritage Farm Festival attracted 5,000 visitors, generating hundreds of thousands in regional revenue. Property values increased 15% through agricultural preservation instead of suburban sprawl. Marcus and Sarah renewed their wedding vows on the farm's 10th settlement anniversary, beneath the same heritage apple trees Vivian had, poisoned, now thriving under federal protection as critical HOA habitat for endangered species. The legislative impact reached national prominence when Congress passed the Rural Property Protection Act, strengthening landowner rights against HOA overreach and establishing federal penalties for systematic harassment. Marcus's testimony before the House Agricultural Committee became legal precedent studied in law schools nationwide, proving that ordinary citizens could create extraordinary change. 3 practical lessons emerged from Marcus's victory that every rural family should remember. Document everything. Corruption thrives in darkness but dies under evidence. Time-stamped photos, records, and logs are your shield. Follow the money. Financial trails reveal the real power structures behind harassment campaigns. Never fight alone. Build coalitions with neighbors, advocacy groups, and media contacts to amplify your voice when local officials ignore your complaints. Federal policy changes now prevent future Morrison-style conspiracies. Mandatory disclosure of HOA board financial relationships and automatic federal review of rural property disputes involving disabled residents are now law. Specialized rural crime task forces investigate similar cases before they escalate to violence or property theft. Corporate accountability extended beyond Prestige Valley's collapse. Banks can no longer issue construction loans contingent on forced property acquisition, and state regulations require full disclosure of developer financing relationships with HOA boards. The business model enabling systematic rural harassment has been criminalized at the federal level. Marcus's memoir, Standing Ground: How One Family Defeated Corporate Terrorism, became a bestseller, inspiring documentaries and congressional hearings. His agricultural conference engagements helped other families recognize early warning signs of organized harassment and access federal resources for protection. The conservation easement ensuring his property remained agricultural forever proved that principle sometimes pays better than profit. The 15 acres were now worth more as federally protected farmland than luxury development property, generating sustainable income through educational tourism and organic agriculture. Local economic benefits extended throughout the community, with farm-to-table restaurants sourcing ingredients from the cooperative. On quiet evenings, Marcus walked across the restored bridge, listening to water flowing over stones his grandfather had placed. He remembered the concrete barriers that once blocked his family's freedom. The smell of evening air carried apple blossoms instead of diesel fumes, cricket songs instead of construction noise, and the peaceful satisfaction of justice finally served. Emma would graduate college and return as the 6th-generation Kellerman working this protected land. Dorothy would live to see great-grandchildren playing beneath heritage trees preserved by federal law. Sarah would continue helping rural families fight similar battles through their education fund and legal advocacy network. The victory had transformed them. Marcus understood that defending liberty sometimes requires more courage than most possess. But watching freedom disappear one property at a time wasn't acceptable. They'd proven David defeats Goliath, when David has evidence, allies, and constitutional principles worth fighting to preserve. Share your HOA nightmare stories below. Let's expose corrupt boards nationwide. Subscribe for more justice stories where good people win. Next week, how a librarian exposed a $2 million embezzlement and saved her community.